Hello everyone, myself Anushri Mittal from the Nasscom FutureSkills team, and I would like to welcome you all for today's session on demystifying cybersecurity. If cybersecurity is something that excites you, you're at the right spot. So just to share some facts with you, do you know that security breaches have increased by 11% since 2018 and 67% since 2014, according to a report by Accenture? Another fact which states that hackers attack every 39 seconds on an average, 2,244 times a day, says University of Maryland. Therefore, it's time to get your hands on the latest trends to stop security breaches. This webinar today will help you get equipped with the fundamentals of cybersecurity and types of threats. You will also learn about the best practices to tackle such crises. Go catch the hackers. I would now like to introduce today's presenter, Ms. Sonali. She is a technical lead holding 9 years of industrial experience in IT, spanning online blended learning, software development, and project and portfolio management. She did her master's in computer application from UP Technical University in 2006. She is certified in data science, latest front-end technologies, and cybersecurity. She is an enthusiast about revolutionizing online learning for high-quality education with latest technologies. Now, a few things I would like to bring to everyone's notice is a recorded version of this webinar will be emailed to all the attendees after the webinar gets over. Secondly, we would love to hear from you. Therefore, if you have any questions during the course of the webinar, you can share them with us in the questions box, and those will be answered at the end of the session. Also, not to miss, there will be a quiz that will be conducted during the last 10 minutes of the session, and the winners will get Amazon gift vouchers worth ₹1,000 each. Over to you, Sonali.
Thank you, Anushri. Good evening, everyone. So welcome you all to the webinar session of Demystifying Cybersecurity. Now, we all know that our society is technologically reliant and the trend is increasing day by day, and there are no signs that it would lay off. So is the cyber attacks that are happening and creating a havoc world around. So let's gain some insight on why the cybersecurity is so important for us in now times and look into the world of cybersecurity. Let me put forward certain best practices for the webinar session. So the AV function for this webinar is being disabled. So if you have any questions, please type into the chat box. I'll be happy to address them at the end of the presentation. There will be also a Kahoot quiz competition at the end and the goodies to be won. Let me introduce briefly again, although Anushri has introduced me. I'm a technical lead at Scale-Up Technologies. My skill set includes cybersecurity, data science, front-end technologies, and Azure. And I have of totality 9 years of industrial experience. So let's begin with the webinar session. Let's see what the agenda is. So we'll be introducing you to the different terminologies that are used into the cyber world as cyber attack, security, and what's the cyber landscape all about. Then we'll talk about the different types of cyber attacks, the different malwares that are recently used for the cyber threats, and the top cyber threats that happened in 2020. We'll be also talking about what the cyber kill chain is and how does it work, and what the enterprise security is all about. How would you secure your enterprise? What techniques and strategies would be utilized in order to secure your enterprise? So we'll be talking about assume compromise and red team versus blue team. We'll be also talking about the different strategies to minimize those cyber attacks. What are the key steps and how would you protect your data on cloud? Lastly, we'll be talking about planning an security incident response. So what would be the model or the guidelines that would be utilized in order to plan a security incident response model? So let's begin with the session. Let me give you a brief introduction of what the cyber is. So if we talk about the cyber, the word cyber itself denotes a relationship with the information technology, that is the computer. And it is not just confined to the computers, it is also the data that becomes a part of it. And the data in the form of storing, protecting, assessing, processing, transmitting of the data, and linking up of the data. Now, this entire data has been there into the environment, and where the environment where the data storage and the communication using computer network occurs is known as cyberspace. Now, we'll be dealing to the very two common terminologies into the cybersecurity, and these are first the cybercrime, which is a crime that is being carried out using the information technology or which targets the information technology. Likewise, we have the cyber attacks. Now, cyber attacks are the standoff attacks that happen to occur in order to disrupt your data or to destroy or control a computing environment or to access the controlled information.
Sonali,
Yes.
one sec. We are not able to see your presentation. So can you just check once? Sorry for the
sure.
interruption.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine now. Okay, so it came and it went back. Now it's okay. So can you just do a slideshow and just start from
Yes.
slide 4?
Hope it's
now it's
visible
okay.
now.
Carry on, please. Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as we were talking, thank you. So as we were talking about the cybercrime and the cyber attacks, so these two common terminologies thus pertains to the entire cyber world. Now coming on to the cybercrime numbers that have been reported recently, the attacks on the IoT devices has been seen to increase about threefolds. 77% of the organizations, they do not have the cybersecurity incident response plan. Cyber attacks cases have increased to about 600% across the different industries. And according to Kaspersky Security Network, 37% increase in cyber attacks in India has been reported in Q1 in 2020 itself. So we can see that how cyber attacks have been increasing rapidly with the increase in the technology. Now, if we talk about the current scenario, so as the current scenario, as it's going on, the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been seen that there has been an elevation at the risk of the cyber attacks have been increased. And what is the reason for that increase? It is because of the heightened activity of insecure digital tools for the customer interaction. Secondly, the use of the personal devices that is being used by the employees that's working at home. And lastly, the leniency of the access management to allow the third-party networks to work from home regime. So these are basically the reasons that have elevated the risk of the cyber attacks during these times. So what does the cybersecurity mean? The cybersecurity comes into being if there had been attacks, then there definitely would have been certain security measures indeed in place or a mechanism in place in order to combat that attacks. So let's see what cybersecurity is all about. It is defending your computers, your servers, your mobile devices, electronic systems, networks, and data from malicious attacks. Now, since it is confined to the information technology security, so it is also known as information technology security or electronic information security. So why do we require cybersecurity? Although we know it on a broadly basis, it is because that the cybercrime is at all-time high and it's only getting worse day by day. More often, the cybersecurity plan will proactively happens to be there into your organizational level data safe, and it is to be for the security compliant. Now let's see who should participate in creating effective defense from cyber attacks. So who should participate? What do you think? First is the people. The people should understand and comply to the disciplines of the cybersecurity. and that is using the strong passwords, the attachments in the email, and backing up of your data. Secondly is the processes. The organizations have the framework, should have certain framework in place in order to deal with these cyber attacks. So they must be able to identify those attacks, protect the systems, detect the systems, and respond to the threats, and lastly, recover from the successful attacks. Likewise, we know definitely there would be a technology. So there are certain endpoints that need to be managed while the cyber attack happens. And these endpoints are your mobiles, your desktops, your smart devices, your networks, and your cloud. So what are the technologies that are being used in order to prevent those attacks? It is the next generation firewall, the DNS filtering, malware protection, the antivirus software, and definitely an email security solution, since the email is being utilized heavily these days. Now let's talk about a little bit about cyber landscape. We all know that the cyber landscape is vast, and it's too wide to handle by an individual to its entirety. The attackers nowadays develop new ingenious methods of compromising the system on the daily basis. So there are certain aspects of the cyber landscape which needs more attention, and that is technology lag. Then we have application development security, skill gaps, asymmetry of attack and defense, increasing availability and sophistication of different tools, monetization of malware, automation of detection, Internet of Things, transition to the cloud, and lastly, increasing regulations. So these are basically the aspects into the cyber landscape that require much more attention in order to reduce the cyber attacks worldwide. Now let's see, if we talk about the cyber attacks, what are the different types of the cyber attacks are? So broadly categorized, cyber attacks are of two types. They are web-based or system-based. Now web-based attacks are those that occurs on your website or any web application, while the system-based attacks are those which are intended to compromise a network or a computer network. Now let's talk about what are the types of the different types of malware. Now malware are malicious software that have a something wrong intent. So there happens to be 30 different types of malwares worldwide that infiltrates your system and creates the havoc with your computer. But we'll be talking about 8 most common malwares that is creating a havoc world round during the recent times. The first one is virus. So virus, if we talk about, it's a type of a malware that is capable of copying itself and spreading to the other computers by attaching themselves to various programs and executing the code when the user launches one of those infected programs. Likewise, the other one is worm. So worm indeed is a type of a malware that spreads over the computer network by exploiting their vulnerabilities of the operating system. The only difference between the two is that one is self-replicating. Once it is into the system, it self-replicates independently onto the other systems as well. Then we have got something called adware. Now these are advertising supported softwares. Now you might have come across the regular pop-ups of advertisements when you open certain websites or certain softwares. So these are basically the adwares. When a malicious code is being attached to these, they becomes a little malicious and act as a malware. Then we have something called as spyware. So spyware, as the word indicates, it spies onto the user information. So spyware, it spies on user activity without their knowledge, thus monitoring their activity. And lastly, they steal off the user's credential, like their username and the password, and go in with, and thus becomes a malware. Then we have got the bots. Now bots are something as automated programs. So these are being created basically in order to do a certain specific task. So when a malicious code has been attached to the bot, so what happens, it's in the botnet, that's a network of your computers, it spreads it spreads through the network of the computers, and thus it may cause the DDoS attack on your system. And we'll be talking about the DDoS lately into the next slide. And then we have something called as ransomware. So ransomware is gotten the most attention in the cyber attacks that happened recently in 2020. And this is one of the more insidious type of the malware. Now what happens here is that it accomplishes by restricting the user's access to the computer or the server by either encrypting the files on the hard drive or locking down the OS and displaying the ransom messages to the user. So until and unless a ransom is been given or been taken, so the data is not being released, and it has been kept as a captive. Then we have something called rootkit. So rootkit is it's a collection of the malware that is designed to give unauthorized access to the computer or area of its software, and often mask its existence or the existence of other softwares as well. And lastly, we have got the Trojan horse. So the Trojan horse is a type of a malware that happens to be a very legitimate program, and it is often it often enters your system through any being attached through a social sites. If you open certain social sites, it's been attached to it, or through an email phishing. Trojan most likely to act as a backdoor and gives an attacker an unauthorized access to the infected computer. Moreover, ransomware attacks are often carried out using the Trojan horse. Now let's see what are the top cyber attacks that happened lately. So first one is distributed denial of service. So as I mentioned earlier, like in the botnets that happened to cause this attack. So in what happens in distributed denial of service is that the perpetrator seeks to make a machine or a network resource unavailable to its users, and by temporarily or indefinitely disrupting the services of the host connected to the internet. So one of the DDoS attack that happened lately was GitHub attack that happened in February 2018, and it was a record-breaking attack that happened, and it took about 1.3 terabits per second of traffic that flooded its servers with 126.9 million packets of data each second. It was one of the massive attack, and GitHub, as we all know, it's a popular online code management service that is being used by the developers. And because the GitHub has its DDoS mitigation service in place, so this attack took very little time to make its impact. The second one is ransomware. So ransomware attack happened lately in April 2020 on a US IT firm, and it was a Maze ransomware attack, which was a mass cyber attack. And it was being reported by the Bleeping Computers. It was made on Cognizant, and likewise in July 30th, 2020, Maze ransomware attack happened even on Canon. And in both of these attacks, the Bleeping Computer, which is a resource site for answering your computer security and technical queries, they happen to report these attacks where the sensitive data and the corporate information was being exfiltrated and was being used to threaten unless the payment was being made. The next one is the phishing attacks. Now, the phishing attacks basically happens in order to steal the user credentials or their bank account details, or indeed their credit card numbers. So it is also might be a type of a a type of an attack that basically happens in the form of an attachment in the emails. So Zoom lately happened to exhibit this cyber attack and in April 2020, and because of its extensive use in today's scenario, this vulnerability of the Zoom was being exposed, and this is how it became the victim of the data breach. Likewise, Twitter breach also happened on July 15, 2020, where US high profiles were being hacked. And it happened due to the spear phishing attack. And what happened was that, like, the breach was the breachers or the attackers, they swindled around about $121,000 in Bitcoin with just initial 300 transactions. And this was the biggest social media cyber attack that happened lately. And the last one is eavesdropping attack. So eavesdropping is basically the snooping or a sniffing attack in which it occurs due to an unsecure or a weakened connection or a network transmission between the user or a server. And due to this, a cyber attack that happened was on February 2020, where billion of devices open to Wi-Fi eavesdropping attack, and it allowed the attackers to eavesdrop on the Wi-Fi communications. So these were the top cyber attacks that happened lately in 2020. Now moving forward, let's talk about what the cyber kill chain is, how do it makes its impact, and what the enterprise security indeed is. So if we talk about the cyber kill chain, so what's a kill chain is? A kill chain is, it helps you to understand the different stages of an attacker, so that you can understand the attacker's point of view and then combat that attack. So a kill chain helps you in case of cyber kill chain, it helps you understand and combat the ransomware, security breach, and advanced persistent attacks, that is the APTs. So a cyber kill chain, it's a series of steps that traces the stages of the cyber attack from early reconnaissance stage to the exfiltration of the data. Now, this cyber kill chain framework has been derived from a military model, where originally established to identify and protect and attack, engage and destroy the target. Now let's see how the cyber kill chain works. So each stage in a cyber kill chain is related to certain type of activity in a cyber attack, regardless of whether that attack is internal or an external attack. So there are in totality 8 phases of cyber kill chain, as you can see from the infographics. Let's see one by one what are the different stages of a cyber kill chain is. Now, first is the reconnaissance stage. So reconnaissance stage is the observation stage, where the attacker tries to observe and identify both the targets, target as well as what are the targets for the attack would be. The second is the intrusion. Now, based on what the attackers discovered, now the attackers, they are able to get into your system, often leveraging a malware or security vulnerabilities. The third one is exploitation. Now, once the intrusion has been made, now the attackers, what does it do? It exploits those vulnerabilities and delivers the malicious code into the system in order to get a better foothold. Then comes the privilege escalation. Now, the attackers often need more privileges onto the system to get access to more data and permissions for this. So they need to escalate these privileges, often to an admin. And then comes the lateral movement. Now, once they get the privileges, they start moving laterally into the connected computers. So whether it's high permissions or greater access to the system. Then comes obfuscation or anti-forensics. So once they start moving laterally, what do? They often lay false trails, compromise the data, and clear the logs to confuse or slow down if any forensic team is being monitoring them. And then comes the denial of service, means like once if they are into the system, the disruption of the normal access to the users and the systems in order to stop the attack from being monitored, tracked, or blocked. And lastly, there comes the exfiltration. That is, once everything is being done, denial of service is done, the data is being extracted out of the compromised systems. So these are actually the phases of the cyber kill chain, and these helps us to understand what are the different stages of the kill chain is, and how to combat and prevent the attacks or the threats at what stage. Now we'll talk about something known as the enterprise security. So enterprise security, if I talk about, it comprises of the strategies or the techniques that the companies do undertake in order to reduce the risk of unauthorized access to the data, the IT systems, and the information. So with the threat of the cyber attacks looming in the organizations of all sizes, it is imperative for all the companies to have a foolproof security in place to keep their data safe and secure. So one such philosophy that is being utilized is well known, and it is assume compromise. So let's see what the assume compromise it's all about. As its words say, that we have to assume that your system is already being compromised. So what's next? What steps need to be taken? So it's a philosophy that is based on the idea to build and maintain a security posture in the organization and the information system that already have been compromised. The organization should assume that the preventive technologies that we would generally use, like firewalls, antivirus, anti-malwares, intrusion detection system, will fail. Information security teams should focus instead of detecting and responding to suspicious activity rather than simply preventing the intrusion. The detection of the suspicious activity can be assisted by leveraging cloud-based analytics services that constantly monitor information systems telemetry for the anomalies. And lastly, restrict the attacker's ability to move laterally between the information systems and to restrict their ability to escalate the privileges within those systems. So these are basically the pointers that need to be kept in mind in the assume compromise, and it is specifically for the organizations to be very much into the information, means like the organization should understand that they have to have some plans in action so that they could put forward in order to prevent those attacks or the cyber threats. Then we have one more strategy that is in place for enterprise security, that is red team versus blue team exercise. So what happens into it is that it's an exercise that stimulates the attack against an organizational information system. And what does it do is that the red team provides a foolproof concept to the organization that this organization is vulnerable to certain specific attacks. Likewise, the blue team, it detects and responds to that attack in an effective manner. Thus, a red team acts as an offensive security team, while a blue team, they act as a defensive security team. Now, the objective of this entire exercise in an organization is to test the preparedness of an organization's security and its ability to detect and respond to the attack. This exercise would generally be carried out for about 2 to 3 weeks, depending upon the situation that the organization is in. Now, after looking into the enterprise security measures, let's see certain strategies which are utilized in order to minimize the cyber attacks. So what should be the key steps in order to minimize the cyber attacks, maybe at individual level or at an organizational level? So all the company needs to effectively protect against follow certain steps in order to effectively protect against the cyber attacks. And these are: secure your hardware, encrypt and backup of your data, use robust firewall and anti-malware software, invest in cybersecurity insurance, and lastly, encourage a security-centered culture. So how would you do that? Control the physical access to your computer components. Secure your Wi-Fi networks. Require individual user accounts for each employee. Regularly change passwords. Limit the employee's access to data and information, and limit authority to install the software. And lastly, the most important, train the employees in cybersecurity principles. In case of cloud, as been widely used nowadays in order to store your data, you have to have certain strategies in order to minimize those cyber attacks in cloud as well. So let's see what the strategies could be. Correctly configure the cloud according to the cloud provider's best practices. Continually update and monitor the cloud security services and the environment, and have the latest security patches on your virtual machines in the cloud, and ensure that the system that you are using meet the required security standards in an ongoing process. And lastly, a quick remedial action when alerted to a security breach is very vital, and thus knowing how to fix those issues as they arise is important. An example is like Azure has its own security center, a built-in tool that helps to prevent, detect, respond to the threats quickly as they arise, so as the other cloud services as well. So we have to have the knowledge of what are actually the security centers or the services being provided by the cloud in order to prevent the threats or to monitor those threats. Lastly, we'll look into the planning a security incident response. Now, what does the planning a security incident response mean? So whenever an incident happens, there has to be a plan in order to prevent those incidents to happen. So there are certain guidelines that have been laid down by different bodies, and they have given us certain frameworks. So let's go through those guidelines one by one and see what guidelines have been given. So first one is cybersecurity framework. So this cybersecurity framework has been given by NIST, that is the National Institutes of Standard and Technology. And it provides a comprehensive set of guidelines which reduces and manages the risk. And it includes a series of simple, low-cost steps and tailored to meet the needs of all the companies. So there are a set of 5 steps that has been given by CSF. The first one is identify. So identify basically is a step where you try to understand your resources and your risk. So how would you do that? That is identifying and control who has the access to your business information, require individual user accounts for each employee, and then create the policies and procedures for the cybersecurity. The next step is protect step. Now, if you experience any cyber attack, so you need to be prepared in order to resist it. So how would you do that? Limit the employee's access to data and information, and install the surge protectors or the UPS. Patch your operating system, install and activate the softwares and hardware firewalls, secure your wireless access points and network, set up your web and email filters, dispose of your old computers and media safely, and at last, encrypt your sensitive business information and train your employees. Then comes the detect step. Now, if an attack happens, so you should have certain mechanism in place which will alert you as quickly as possible. So how would you do that again? Now, for this, we need to install and update the antivirus, the anti-spyware, and other anti-malware programs, and maintain and monitor the logs. Now, once we'll detect, let's see how would you respond if an attack happens to occur. So we have to develop a plan for the disaster and information security incidents for this purposes. And then comes lastly the recover step. Now if a cyber attack has happened, it has caused its havoc. Now what would you do in order to resume to the normal operations? So for this you need to have a full backup of information, data and business data. Continually schedule your incremental backups, consider the cyber insurance, and make improvements continually into the processes, procedures, and technologies. Now let's see one more framework or the model that gives you a basic guideline that how the cyber threats need to be handled. But here the threat modeling model is indeed specific for any organizational need. while that was more generic. If we talk about a threat modeling, it's a systematic method or a framework to uncover and identify the possible threats. Now, if we talk about this specifically, it's a structured approach to security in order to address the top threats that have the greatest potential threat into your organization. So it is very much specific for any organization. So what are the benefits of cyber threat modeling? So benefits would include like looking at your systems from your attacker's point of view. So this allows one to determine and then prioritize what needs to be protected within an organization. Helping you to think like an attacker without being an attacker. So how likely it is that this company will be attacked. And then helping determine what mitigations should be in place. So what are the consequences if the attack is successful on an asset? And lastly, helping you to understand your attack surface and develop a plan accordingly in order to reduce its effect. Then we also have a third model in place, that is a CIA Triad model, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So this model is designed basically as the guideline policies for information security within an organization. But this model is basically utilized into the cloud, and Microsoft Azure provides this CIA Triad for customer data while also enabling the transparent accountability. So according to this triad model, the elements that happen to be in the CIA triad are most crucial components of security. And these are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So here the confidentiality indeed is a set of rules that limits the access to the information. It directly relates to the privacy of the data. So this privacy could be maintained in form of data encryption as such. Secondly, we have integrity. So integrity is the assurance that the information is competent, it is consistent, trustworthy, and accurate. And this is basically being done by using the checksums in the data. And third is availability. So availability is the guarantee of the reliable access to the information by the authorized people. So here basically the emphasis is on authentication and authorization of the data. So these are basically the three main crucial elements of CIA Triad. Now let's see one clip, a video clip that gives you a good insight of how planning of a security incident model would help you, any individual or an organization to combat the havoc that it might create on an individual or organizational level.
Cybercrime is a global problem that's been dominating the news cycle. It poses a threat to individual security and an even bigger threat to large international companies, banks, and governments. Today's organized cybercrimes far outshadow lone hackers of the past. Now, large organized crime rings function like startups and often employ highly trained developers who are constantly innovating online attacks. Most companies have preventative security software to stop these types of attacks. But no matter how secure we are, cybercrime is going to happen. Meet Mia. She's the Chief Security Officer for a company that makes a mobile app to help customers track and manage their finances. So security is a top priority. Mia's company has an incident response platform in place that automates the entire cybersecurity process. The IRP software integrates all the security and IT software needed to keep a large company like Mia secure into a single dashboard and acts as a hub for the people, processes, and technology needed to respond to and contain cyber attacks. Let's see how this platform works in the case of a security breach. While Mia is on vacation, irregular activity occurs on her account. A user behavior analytics engine that monitors account activity recognizes the suspicious behavior involving late-night logins and an unusual amount of data being downloaded. This piece of software is the first signal that something is wrong. An alert is sent to the next piece of software in the chain, the Security Information and Event Management System. Now the IRP can orchestrate a chain of events that ultimately prevents the company from encountering a serious security disaster. The IRP connects to a user directory software that MeitY's company uses, which immediately recognizes that the user account belongs to an executive who's on vacation. Next, the IRP sends the incident's IP address to a threat intelligence software, which identifies the address as a suspected malware server. As each piece of security software runs, the findings are recorded in the IRP's incident, which is already busy creating a set of instructions, called a playbook, for a security analyst to follow. The analyst then locks MeitY's account and changes her passwords. By this time, the software has determined the attempted attack came from a well-known cybercrime organization using stolen credentials. MeitY's credentials were stolen when the hackers found a vulnerability in her company's firewall software and used it to upload a malware-infected file. Now that we know how the attack happened, the analyst uses the IRP to identify the specific server vulnerability that allowed the attack, what other machines on the network are vulnerable, and the malware file. The IRP uses information from the endpoint tool to determine which machines need to be patched, recommends how to patch them, and then allows the analyst to push the patches to all the computers and mobile devices instantly. Meanwhile, MeitY has to alert the legal department of the breach. The IRP instantly notifies the correct person of the situation and the status of the incident. After the attack is contained and MeitY's account is secure, the analyst communicates which data may have been stolen or compromised during the incident. He identifies which geographies, jurisdictions, and regulatory agencies cover the users and information affected by the attack. Then the IRP creates a series of tasks so the organization can notify the affected parties and follow all relevant compliance and liability procedures. In the past, a security breach this large would have required MeitY's company to involve several agencies and third parties to solve the problem, a process that could have taken months or longer. In a matter of hours, the incident response platform organized all of the people, processes, and technology to identify and contain the problem, find the source of the attack, fix the vulnerability, and notify all affected parties. And in the future, MeitY and her team will be able to turn to cognitive security tools. These tools will read and learn from tens of thousands of trusted publications, blogs, and other sources of information. This knowledge will uncover new insights and patterns, anticipate, isolate, and minimize attacks as they happen, and immediately recommend actions for security professionals to take, keeping data safe and companies like MeitY's out of the headlines. Cybercrime.
So hope you enjoyed this video. Now, as a cybersecurity expert, you would generally feel that cybersecurity is a part of concern only for a few. But now, as the data is increasing day by day and we are utilizing the cloud environment, each and every person as an individual or as an organizational level, they have to play an active part in order to secure your data and to get your data safe. So we all are constantly being targeted by the cyber attackers and every second, and we are not aware of it. So what do you think if what would happen in case your computer or your mobile devices gets hacked? Do you have any plan in action, or you have anything ready for yourself in order to combat that attack? So we have already talked about the assume compromise into this webinar session. How do it works? So here, the Foundations of Cybersecurity Program course indeed is for everyone. And not only it would tell you about what are the different types of cyber attacks can happen, but it also helps you understand and plan how to combat, how to mitigate, as well as how to detect those attacks and monitor those attacks. So if I talk about FOC, the Foundation of Cybersecurity Program, it not only gives you the foundational aspects, but it caters more than that is required for an individual or an organization in order to combat that attack. So let's have a quick look on what the Foundation of Cybersecurity program gives you. So the Foundation of Cybersecurity program comprises of 9 different courses, where each course has its own set of guidelines and the learning outcomes. So the first one is the Enterprise Security Fundamentals that gives you a knowledge of what the current cybersecurity landscape is about assumed compromise. It talks about red team and blue team exercise and the kill chain. Then we have the second course that talks about the threat detection, planning for a secure enterprise, where we understand the different detection methods that can be utilized. The third one is the planning a secure incident response plan. So who all plays an important part and how the team is being built in order to plan that security incident response plan. What are the post-incident activity? Then we have the fourth course that talks about the PowerShell security best practices, where we have a good hands-on on how the PowerShell scripts are being written and how they are being utilized in order to audit and log those events. Then we have got the fifth course that talks about managing the identities on the Azure Active Directory and how to secure your Active Directory. The sixth course basically digs into the securing data in Azure and SQL Server. We'll talk about the SQL injections here, and we'll also have a hands-on of how the SQL Server or the SQL is being utilized in order to secure your data in Azure. The seventh course indeed would give you a flavor of how the Windows 10 security features are being utilized in order to secure your system against the cyber attacks. And it would definitely give you an insight that you might not be aware of, that what Windows 10 security features are. The eighth course talks about the Windows Server 2016 security features, and it describes the entire security technologies here. It also gives you a hands-on of how these features can be utilized fully in order to secure your system. And lastly, we have Microsoft Azure Security Services. So what services are available in Azure and how could they be utilized? We have a good hands-on here, indeed, an extensive hands-on, so that it helps in monitoring your data and making it secure on cloud as well. So these are the 9 courses that are being covered into the Foundation of Cybersecurity program. So with this, we end the webinar session, and now the podium is open for your questions. You may please come up with your questions now.
Thank you so much for that, Sonia. Sonali.
Now I'll hand over the presentation to Lavanya, and she'll be taking you forward with the Kahoot quiz.
So there are a few questions that have come up.
Yep.
So I will just read those questions, and then either of you, Lavanya and Sonali, either of you can take these questions.
Yeah,
so
sure.
the first question is by Chandrasekhara Reddy. He's asking, is there any difference between web-based attacks when it comes to mobile devices and the traditional desktop and laptop devices?
Okay, so when you say web-based attack, like I mentioned, I did reply to you in previously. So when you say web-based attacks, it originates in the web. So irrespective of the end user device, it is going to attack. But when the end user device is a mobile or iPad, the amount of privacy that's divulged is more. So the perpetration of the cyber attack is more when it's a mobile device. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you for the question, Chandrasekhar. Second question is by Yash Raj Dua. What is the difference between cybersecurity and ethical hacking? So probably he wants to establish a relationship between the two. So can anybody of you explain that?
Okay, so ethical hacking, in Sonali's presentation, she spoke about the red team and the blue team. So what the red team does is actually ethical hacking. So what they do is they actually attack the system to figure out where the vulnerability is. So you have to, I mean, if you are a developer, I mean, if you have a system in place and you want to find out where the vulnerabilities are, think about a mason building a building, right? I mean, to see if the building is strong enough, he's going to knock it and see. So it's the same. So that is what ethical hacking is. Ethical hacking is what the red team does.
Thank you for that, Lavanya. Next question is more pertaining to the course. So I think, Sonali, you should take this question. Nadi Matla Paraganan, I hope I have pronounced the name correctly, is asking, are there any prerequisites to take the Foundations of Cybersecurity course?
So the cybersecurity course starts from the very basics. So there are no such prerequisites as such, because it caters all the prerequisites that have been required to understand the terminologies that have been required to move further into the course. So they can take up, anyone can take up this course.
Okay, so thank you for that one. So next question is by Nilesh. And he's asking us a question, can you tell us something about Know Yourself? So I presume that that question is more to do with who we are, what we do as an organization. So we are basically Skill Up Technologies based out of India. We work very closely with the Nasscom FutureSkills a department of Nasscom, which is the governing body for IT/ITS. We are learning transformation learning organization that provides courses in 5 future technologies, and cybersecurity is one of them. So I hope, Nilesh, I have answered the question. You can visit the site https://skillup.online. We will also type it in the chat and give it to you, and you can check what are the different kind of courses which are prepared in line with the Nasscom's Sector Skill Council recommendations. There's a question from Devi Jagannath Kotha. He says that I'm currently pursuing a BTech, so he's a student. My question is that will I get a cybersecurity job or a derivative of that right after my BTech? If yes, what certification and skill I should have? I want to become security specialist or a pen tester in any cloud or premise infrastructure. Thanks in advance, ma'am. So this is more pertaining to the career.
So for this, since he is a student, I think he should go in for the certifications for cybersecurity if he's trying to pursue one. And more probably, he has to have a hands-on as well in order to start his career with the cybersecurity. So as of the first step, he should go in for the certifications.
Okay, thanks for that one. So the question is from Anjali Mishra. I think this is more pertaining to Anushri to answer. She's asking, when will we receive the recording of today's webinar?
You will receive it an hour after the webinar. An automated email will come to you.
Thank you for that. John Kennedy is asking, many mobile devices are configured with corporate network. How secured is the network? So let me read this again. How secured is the network the mobile is hacked? So what he means to say is that if the mobile devices are connected to the corporate network, then what happens in case the mobile is hacked? So Lavanya, would you want to take that question?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah. So in such a case, the corporate network is definitely very vulnerable. So it should be a part of your response plan. So the corporates will usually have a response plan which will detect any such, malwares or anything installed in the mobile phones and cut it out. And that is why, still a lot of corporates do follow the age-old thing of not allowing smartphones inside the premises, precisely because of this. Because once the phone is attacked, it definitely can perpetrate the entire corporate network. And I also saw another question with respect to, mobiles are not prone to cyber attacks. which is a very wrong, I would say it's a myth. Basically, what is happening now is, especially with most of the mobiles connected to the net all the time through data and Wi-Fi, mobiles are used as bots for the DDoS attacks and stuff. Because you usually never tend to realize that. If it's your computer, you realize it. If it's your phone, you never realize, because you're not 24/7 on the phone. So it always happens. So your phone is very, very vulnerable to be used as a bot in a DDoS attack.
Okay, thanks for that, Lavanya. Due to constraint of time, so we will just try to club a few common questions and answer them. So one question is that will we get a certificate? Yes, there is a Nasscom Skill Up Online joint certificate you will get for this course. The other question regarding the course is that does this involve practicals? As Sonali mentioned during her webinar, there are a lot of labs that you will be doing during this course, and there'll be practical experience of all the different kind of kill chains, blue team versus red team, doing things on PowerShell. So all those things will be done and covered in the labs as well, right? The other question is that will be ethical tech hacking taught in the course? No, this course is not about ethical hacking. It is about cybersecurity. One more question is there which says Instagram and Twitter, Google steal our data. So no, they do not steal your data, but when you're accessing their application for your own use, you are actually committing by you are allowing them to take your data, and that is what they use. So you really cannot say that they steal your data. Okay. So one more question is, how do we know the mobiles are hacked and what are the measures? So this is a question by Shri Varshini.
If you see any applications which you have not installed on your phone, and especially if it comes up, it's like, do you want to clean your phone? So ideally, you should not get any app on your phone which says, there will be downloads in between, there will be ads in between. Preferably, do not, put in such applications on your phones, because those are potentially viruses. So the only way you'll know is, right after you access one of them, you start having unnecessary messages from applications that you've not installed. And it is a good thing to always update your OS, like just how you will do for your mobile, your desktops and laptops. Always update your OS and try not to open unnecessary attachments, and do a cleanup of your documents and your file system on your phones as well, just like how you would do on your computers.
Okay, so I'll just take two more questions, and the rest of the questions can be answered in the chat or later on to the people through the emails. So one question is that what do the people do with the data they steal? So as I mentioned, that they do not steal any data. It is us that we allow them to pick up the data from our systems, and that's what they use, if it is in context to what Twitter and Google or Instagram do. The second question, or the last question that we should take right now, is how do we do the labs, and are there any timelines to complete the labs? So this question is from Dharmesh Patel. So Sonali, can you give an insight on labs, please?
So the labs would indeed be more pertaining to the PowerShell scripts. So you'll be using the PowerShell. You'll be taught that how the PowerShell is being utilized in order to secure your system. Also, we have certain labs around the SQL Server 2016 that would help you to understand how the SQL is being utilized in order to secure your data on Azure. And we also have the lab around the Azure Security Center, which help you to understand how to configure your Azure Security Center, and it would help you to monitor the cyber threats if they happen to be there on cloud as well. So we have got these labs indeed in our course.
Thanks for that one. Last question is, what are the scope of the jobs after doing a cybersecurity course?
So as I already mentioned, that after doing this course, we'll be providing them with the certification from Nasscom as well. So they have one certification from the Nasscom, and then definitely they would be able to show in case there would be a ups in skilling indeed would be there, so that they would be able to enter into the industry with a little prior knowledge of cybersecurity.
Okay, thank you so much for the answering those questions. Lavanya, over to you for Kahoot.
Yes, please. If you can just make me the presenter.
Yeah.
So Sonali, can you move to the next slide, please, once, and explain the rules?
Yeah, sure. Is it visible?
No, Sonali.
Okay.
Okay, so Sonali, I just made you the presenter once again, so now you can project.
Yes. Thank you. So this is a Kahoot quiz slide. Likely, there are certain instructions that need to be followed while playing the Kahoot quiz. So basically, use your webinar registration email ID to participate in the quiz. To participate, you need to log into kahoot.it via your mobile phones. Use the pin that is being displayed on the screen to participate. So there would be a pin that would be displaying on the screen that you need to enter into your mobile phones in order to log into the quiz. And the leaderboard will change with every question being answered. There would be total 11 questions, and top 3 on the leaderboard will be declared the winners. And Amazon gift vouchers worth ₹1,000 each will be sent out to the webinar winners via the webinar registration email IDs. And if you have any, if you want any clarifications to be made, you can write us to contact@skillup.online. So Lavanya, over to you now. I'm making you the presenter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you all see it?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Let's get started. Reduce the volume. So what's getting displayed here is the game pin that you'll have to be using. So log into the Kahoot IT app and enter the game pin, and you'll see your name on the board.
Lavanya, you may want to mute the music, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
The questions are very general. I think anybody who's using the internet would be able to answer these questions. So you do not need to be a cybersecurity specialist. If you've been online and if you've kind of listened through the webinar, you should definitely be able to answer most of the questions. And there are no negative marking for wrong answers. So just give it a try. Okay, I'll wait for another 30 seconds and I'll get the game started. Please join in. We have another 20 seconds. Okay, I'd like to see 3 more players, and 60 is a great number to start with. Let's see if we can get to 60. 1 more to go for 60 players. Let's see who's the lucky person. Yes, we have 60. Let's get started. I'll put a little bit of music just to build up the tempo for the game. Wonderful. We have 36 correct answers. Let's see who's on the leaderboard. We have Suresh on the leaderboard, Anu going next, and GST third. Let's see if the position changes with the next question. Next question coming up right now. Twenty-three right answers this time. Okay, 2012 definitely no. I mean, cybersecurity has been around for way longer than that. Okay, all right. I thought a lot of guys will confuse it with the Y2K issue, but yeah, looks like only 8 of you got it wrong. Let's see if there's any change in the leaderboard status. GST on the lead, Suresh second, and Aru third. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next question. No need to answer. This is just for you to observe the OSI model for those of you who do not know the 7 layers of the OSI. Okay, let's move on to the question. So 6 correct answers again. That's fantastic. And let's see what's happened to the leaderboard. Suresh is back in the lead, and 9 players have reached answers 3, which means you've got all of the 3 questions right. That's fantastic. I think the picture does give away a clue. We have 18 correct answers this time. This is not this is not eavesdropping or cyber warfare or malware. This is your phishing attack, which is a kind of social engineering. So pretending to be someone else. This is more like how we add filters in our pictures on the phones. That's social engineering. Literally, you're engineering your face to look like someone else. Let's see if there's a change in the leaderboard. Whoa, we have new winners this time. New leaderboard people this time. We'll see if that changes again. John is the highest climber. Well done, John. We'll move on to the next question now. This is not about the COVID virus, okay? This is about the computer virus. I know in times like this, you tend to confuse. We have 22 correct answers. So just like the COVID, you know, even the computer virus does not have the ability to replicate itself. We have Abhishek in the lead. That's fantastic. We have all the top 3 positions have changed since it started. And we have Yashraj who's climbed up 25 places. That's fantastic. Let's move on to the next one. I think I did give away the answer for this while I was answering one of the questions that was asked during the Q&A session. 34 correct answers. Fantastic. Yes, that's very, very correct. The red team focuses on imitating real-world attacks, so it knows where exactly the vulnerability is. Abhishek still on the lead. Bhavya has moved to the 2nd position and Karthik on the 3rd position. Anjali has moved up 16 places. Fantastic. Let's see if she climbs further and comes in the top 3 next time. Nine correct answers. Yeah, so this was a very classic case of DDoS attack, or the distributed denial of service attack, that happened on the GitHub in 2018. So think about it. I mean, all of you from the IT, you all store all of your code in GitHub, and suddenly you see that, you know, GitHub is unable to reach server, error page coming up. So that happened for 10 minutes, and that was a huge impact on the world IT population. Abhishek's on fire. Answer streak of 7. Fantastic. Bhavya retaining the 2nd position and Karthik in the 3rd position. "41 correct answers." Fantastic. I think this is the first question which has got more than 40 right answers. Very well done. Let's see if there's a change in the leaderboard. Abhishek still retains his position, Bhavya too, and Karthik too. But Suresh is back in the lead with answer streak of 3. Let's see if he gets back in the top 3 position, because he was the lead in the first 2. 41 correct answers again. Very well done. CIA Triad, as you all know, is one of the most important dimensions of the cybersecurity cube, and it stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Well done. Let's see if there's any change in the leaderboard. Abhishek still maintaining position 1, Bhavya and 2, and Manish is made it to position 3, and I see Suresh back on the top 5 list. Well done. And Deepak is in position 4. Rama is the highest climber and has climbed 8 places. I think we are up for the last question, and this is going to be a little tricky one. So buckle up. Twenty correct answers. This was a tricky one, but yeah, cryptography is used to a great extent in cybersecurity, so this was more of an exercise for you to kind of just get used to it. Let's move on to see the final podium, and we'll know the winners. Deepak in position 3, Manish Sahu in 2, Abhishek the winner, and he's, I think, retained the top position for a while now. Fantastic, congratulations winners, and that's about the game.
So, Lavanya,
Thanks,
can you just project your screen? Thank you so much.
Yep.
I would like to identify the email IDs of all the people. So I would request the 3 winners to kindly share their email IDs in the chat, please.
Anushri, are you able to take back the presenter role from me, or do I have to give it over?
That's fine.
So once again, I request the winners to please share their email IDs, or is there a method, Lavanya, by where you can help us identify the email IDs of Manish, Abhishek, and Deepak Belwal?
No, the version of Kahoot that we have does not give their email IDs, so they'll have
We
to.
we can get it from the registrants list also.
Yes, there are multiple. So I would request to please share your email IDs in the chat box, the winners. While I'm checking in the list, okay, so Manish Sahu email ID is viz.manish@gmail.com. That's one winner. The second winner is Abhishek. So the top of the podium is Abhishek. So let's first look for Deepak. So Deepak Belwal is deepakbelwal@outlook.com. And the third one, which is Abhishek KG. So let's look for Abhishek.
Abhishek G.
Okay, sorry, Abhishek G. Please bear with me for a minute. Abhishek G is Abhishek Goyal. Email ID is abhishekgoyal abhishek76.goyal@gmail.com.
Yeah, he's written
So
it on
I'm
the
just
chat box as
posting these
well.
email. Okay. So I'm just posting these email ID on the chat for everybody's knowledge. So number one is Abhishek Goyal. Second is Manish Sahu.
And just in case you did not notice, Abhishek got all of it right, 10 out of 10.
That's fantastic.
Manish Sahu has also posted his email ID on the chat box.
Awesome.
Yes. Okay. And the third position is by Deepak. So I'm putting this email ID in the chat box. So request Sonali to please pick up these email IDs and project it once on the screen through the slide.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
You're the presenter, Sonali.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I would like to announce that for more information about courses in cybersecurity or any other emerging technologies, please visit fslearning.nasscom.in. The link for the same has been shared with you all in the chat box.
Okay, so these are the winners. So congratulations to everyone. And thank you for being part of the cybersecurity webinar that was organized in association with Nasscom Future Skills. Please coming back for the webinars that we organize together, and happy learning to all of you. Anything else, Anushri, from your side?
No, I'm good. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be with you all today.
Thank you all. See ya.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.